now, just so you know, we can get going. Come on, slideshow. There we go. All right. So this week, first of all, is week 3 overview, and I'm sure you're all wanting to know about placements, and I'm going to talk you all through that for the first section of the workshop today, and then we will be looking at ethical practice in public health, and also having a little bit of a debate about ethical practice, because it is a sphere that, you know, is rapidly changing, I think, in terms of what our role will be as public health practitioners, and something to think about. And then also looking at sometimes the accidental, unintended harm that happens with programs and interventions in public health, and something just to be aware of. So this week we're sort of flipping things a little bit on the head content-wise, and taking a bit of a critical look at our own practice as public health professionals, and what we probably need to look at with open eyes when we are going into these places that are running programs and in all different sorts of settings. So that's where this week's content will take us. Hopefully by the end of this week you'll be able to identify ethical challenges in public health. Also look at a few guiding ethical principles that we sort of set as public health practitioners. Also looking at how to identify risk and unintended risk and harm in public health practice, and also just hopefully you will have a good handle on your placement and where you're heading for that. Okay. So placements. I know you've been wanting to hear all about them. So the good and the bad news is that some are ready to start next week and some are not. So I know you're all looking at graduating, and I am, you know, we're working in the best of our ability, but unfortunately that's the reality of the real world, and the issues we've had have mainly been with our global placement. So on Monday I will be sending an email to all of you identifying where your placements are. I have sent one this morning to some students that will get going sort of immediately. So we'll be able to start our local New South Wales ones, but unfortunately the global ones, we're just still negotiating memorandum of understanding between universities and a few things like that takes administrative time. Now I know a lot of you are going to be concerned about graduation and all those things, so let me talk you through about where that leaves you. And my first main thing is I want you to communicate with me, and I'll be communicating with you. If you have concerns, please come and see me or email me or whatnot, but that's where the reality of as fast as we can push things through are at, partly because this is a new unit and we're negotiating new channels that we haven't done previously. So New South Wales will start next week. You will all get an email on Monday about where you're going, and then the global health placements we're hoping will start in the next 2 weeks, okay? You'll be, like I said, notified on Monday, and there was a few people that were notified today. Some placements will start. Oh, have I doubled the slide up? I have. Oh no, this has got the extra point. This is what I wanted to tell you. And we know that we take all the delays into consideration, and we know that in the learning guide that it's set that you're meant to do your hours in a 10-week period. Well, NERIDA, the DAP, has approved to have it all be flexible in terms of ensuring that how you get those hours done depending on when you start. We can work together and also make sure that you get them done in a reasonable amount of time for you to graduate if that's where you're heading. So don't start panicking about, you might be starting a little bit later than some people, you're going to have less time to do the hours. We'll work with you on all those elements, okay? Oh, I've got a question. I'll have a look at that in a minute. I'll open up the floor in a second. Assessment dates will also be considered, okay? So we know that the assessments are tied to this, and we will, so for example, the learning journal and the learning guide and log that is based on you completing your hours obviously has the assessment date of week 14, which if we were hoping that you were starting next week, which is what was intended, that would have been reasonable. So we will work with you around that. So please know that we're not going to be placing unrealistic expectations on you due to the delay. And like I said, graduation and your completion is our priority. So with a delay in start, we will work with you and we're not going to compromise that at all. So we know it's a delayed start, but this is what we will do. Okay, so for those starting placement next week, you'll get the email on Monday. Your placement allocation, well, you will all get an email on Monday and some will be able to start the connection and some will not. You then need to contact your placement and all the contact information will be in the email, and this will be to organise the first meeting with your supervisor at the placement organisation, okay? So this will be a Zoom meeting or it might be a phone meeting because you will then in that meeting need to set your form of communication between you and your supervisor, okay? So, and during that first meeting, they will provide information about the organisation and the program that you're going to be working on. And then you also need to, in that meeting, and they're aware of the fact that you will be starting that conversation about your learning goals, okay? So that's when you need to start working with your supervisor for that and working out what your learning goals will be. And also from that Monday, once you make that connection with your placement, you need to remember to log your hours, okay? Because the time that you can start counting hours from that week, and all that communication is counted within those hours, and setting your learning guide, your learning goals, and whatnot. So, in this week's folder on views, I'll have all those templates easy for you to find, the logbook and whatnot. Again, I've put them up previously, but you'll be able to find them again. So important to remember that you'll get your email on Monday from me. You then, if able, and I will notify you in your email if you can at this point contact your placement, do so and start that first conversation about, hi, this is me, then they're expecting you, and then you'll go from there. All right, I'm going to stop there and I am going to just exit out of this and ask for your questions. So, yeah, anyone, I know you probably got lots of questions and that's what this is for. So Jess has got her hand up. I'll let you go first, Jessica.
Oh, thanks. You said that we might be able to organise a meeting with them via Zoom. Is that assuming that they have Zoom?
Zoom or Skype, yes, and that is the case, and that's why I said it might be in other mediums, so it might be phone first. I know that a fair portion of the ones starting on Monday do have Zoom.
Right, fantastic, cool, thanks.
So yeah, so that was why I said Zoom or other. So you will, if they don't, then you'll need to, and that all those details will be in the email. And if they don't have Zoom, then you might be able to communicate via Skype or other mediums as well. But I know that on Monday, fair portion do have Zoom.
Yeah, no worries. Also, you mentioned the templates on views. Where do I find those?
So they are already up. I think I put them in week 1 or under the, I definitely put them up. Where were they? Let me just bring up views. I'll put them again in this week's folder for you to find. I'm just quickly having a look for you because I remember loading them and we were looking at them previously. Just bear with me for 2 seconds.
Okay, I think I found one. It's under topic 1 in week 1.
Yes, that would have been it. Yep.
Thanks.
All right. So, any other questions?
I actually do have a quick question.
Yes, Emily.
I did email you this morning about it. You said that the Philippines trip
yes.
next year. How would that work for us if we wanted to do that?
Yeah, so and sorry, Emily, I haven't got back to your email this morning. I've been busy doing other things, but we need to talk to Kathy about that. So you're graduating at the end of this year. Is that when you're set to graduate?
Yeah.
Yep. So let's work. I don't have a direct. Kathy knows much more about how we can facilitate that, but she did indicate that it would still be possible. So because you kind of condense all your hours into that 2 week placement. So we could, so if anyone else is interested, but let me have a discussion with Kathy and then I'll get back to you, Emily.
Okay, no worries, thank you.
Sorry.
Just
anyone else?
Sorry, with the learning plan. So
yep,
for me, because I went to Malaysia, so I've already I didn't set out any learning goals while I was there because I didn't have this document. So what do I do about that document?
Did I send that? I thought I sent it.
No, I only got the placement record, not the learning goals, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. That's all right. We can work through. I'll have a look at that. Yeah, you were sort of the first guinea pig. I don't mean to use that, but because you were the first one for us to do this unit, let's have a look back through that and we'll have a think about that. I'll make a time to meet with you, Alana, if that's all right.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? No. All right. So yeah, basically, await that email in your inbox on Monday. And then you can get going from there. For those that do not have, aren't able to start their placement next week, there isn't a workshop, but I will put out. You will know your organisation. So what I'm going to recommend is that you take that week to look at the organisation, sort of do background research on the organisation, and also start to really fill in that learning goal and those, it'll give you a better idea of how to orientate those learning goals so that you're really ready to launch when you get that go ahead to contact your supervisor. I'm just going to quickly have a look at the chat. Aylin, okay. Oh yeah, so the Philippines is still open, Aylin. I will talk to you more about that as well. If you're interested, definitely Philippines option is very much on the cards, and there is $3,000 scholarships up that are, and we have a few of them. So, and I mean, Alana, maybe would you like to say something about that you didn't go to Philippines, you went to Malaysia. Is it worth it?
Oh, yeah, 100%. What you get to do there is more experiential learning. So even though majority of our public health is online, you actually get to go out into the communities, put everything you learn into practice and create these amazing connections with people from across the world. It's an incredible experience. I can't talk it up enough. Like, if you have the opportunity to go, do it. And the scholarship helps a lot. It usually covers the course cost fees. And I think with this one, it might even cover half or most of the flight as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alana. And like I said, very happy to work with anyone that's would like to go to ensure that you still graduate in time, and that, as Alana did, was credited for the place, because it's sort of just condensed, like she said, and very much on the ground learning. So we credit all the placements, so that would free up your placement time now, over the next 10 weeks, and you would consolidate it into a couple of weeks in Philippines in January. So I will email me, Emily has, Aylin, if you're interested, and I'll very much set up a meeting with Kathy and we can work through enabling that for you guys, because I, like Alana, think it's such a valuable experience for you going forward, that I'm happy to enable that happens as well. So, all right, I will, if no one else has any other questions at the moment, then I will continue on with the content for this week. I'll start the slideshow again. Okay, so Ethics. Now, I know you do an ethical unit. Is it in your first year, second year? So we're not going to go into great detail, but there are whole units dedicated to ethical and legal practice within public health, but I thought it was important to touch on it a little bit just as we're going forward, partly because it's something that, as you're out in these placements and looking at the different programs, often it's good to have a little bit of knowledge and a critical eye over things as well, coming from a public health, thinking about future public health practice and what's ethical and what not. So we know that health is a human right, and that's really the fundamental guiding principle of public health practitioners. We are there to enable, ideally, globally, every human the right to full health and prosperity, and us as public health practitioners are the sort of mechanism or tool to try and enable that to happen. As we know, health is so complex, and the complexity in society and global living and whatnot, often in political conflicts, all those globalization, all those barriers often make that quite a difficult hurdle. And that's why we all often struggle with pulls and pokes in all sorts of different directions as a public health practitioner. You're going to be pulled from industry, you're going to be pulled from policy and politics, you're going to be pulled from your own community and individuals. You're also going to be challenged to think about your own ethical standpoint on things at times, and then how do you encompass and bring all those together. And I think that's one of a more challenging aspect of being a public health practitioner. We are there primarily to ensure that every human has the best access to healthcare and enables them to have the best health outcomes they can, but often there's obstacles in the way, and what's ethical and what's not around those obstacles is often something that we have to navigate within these systems. We also know that human beings are independent and deserve autonomy over choice. So as a health practitioner, a public health practitioner, are we enabling that or disabling that sometimes in our programs and choices? And that's, again, another ideology that often is hard to grapple with, in terms of, are you dictating a certain way that people should be living in terms of policy? Yes, it betters their health outcomes, but does it take away their autonomy? So again, these are just issues that I want you to start critically thinking about as you head into the public health workforce, and things to bear in mind. Often, we are part of a system, our systems, and there's not a lot we can do, but thinking about these elements, I think, will better your practice. We're often asked to make judgments on behalf of interest groups and special populations, but what are we to determine what is right and wrong in those situations? And often, a classic example of that is Indigenous health within Australia. There's been probably what's deemed some very bad health policy choices implemented for Indigenous health, particularly in the 2007 intervention. And there is great criticism of that coming out now, and a turn in how we address Indigenous health has come about from that. But at that time, that was what the policy and politics were directing and determining. So, we as public health practitioners are given a role to often, as the expertise within these fields, to make a judgment or a call on behalf of a health group. But if it's the right one, and how we've come to that decision, is something we often need to critically think about and critically determine. And of course, in ensuring that those interest groups are represented and that we're not making decisions on their behalf without their input, is something that we need to be very mindful of. So something that we need to think about in that is what challenges we have ahead of us as public health practitioners. And like I said, sometimes I know at times I've definitely felt as just part of the system and you're very powerless, even though it might go against your ethical principles or it might go against your knowledge as well. So we'll just look a little bit at how some of these challenges might present themselves, and then look a little bit at some guiding values that we can think about how we can approach them in our own practice. So some of the challenges that we are presented with as public health practitioners are determining the appropriate use of public health authority. And I touched on this before, we are there with a role to play in terms of bettering the health outcomes for others, but we also want to be mindful of the fact that we don't want to blur those lines between what is appropriate use of that privilege and then what is stepping too far in one way or the other. And, some can argue that certain governmental policies surrounding, legislation around, an example might be looking at lockout laws. Okay, so some people and public health practitioners very much advocate for that, but then there's obviously another side to that debate, and questioning it, and everything that I'm discussing today is for you to think about critically. Okay, so. And that's what it's important to do also when you have that authority as a public health practitioner. So you might go in with an evidence base that says the lockout laws greatly reduce the risk of harm to individuals during certain periods of time. This is going to be the best outcome for that population. But then also thinking about counter arguments in terms of, might that damage small business, or how's that going to affect other issues in that community? And we are embedded within communities, and it's important to think about what our actions are also implementing or impacting on other community members. This is often one that does really tie our hands as public health practitioners, and I know it's one that I've come up against before. And as you learn a lot in your sort of foundation subjects within your degree, we are seen a little bit as the poor cousins in terms of health expenditure at times, and the pie chart of financial breakdown definitely has us with a very small slither of the pie. That does mean that often decisions are made due to resource allocation, which may not be the most ethically correct decision at the time, and there might be other populations more at need, but there might be limited resources, or there might be a priority with the resources in one particular way due to a political policy that's being pushed by a certain political train of party line. And that's the other thing to remember with all these things. Fortunately or unfortunately, in public health, it's not void of political influence. So, your resource allocation, your budgeting, how much you're given for that year is going to be directed by politics and policy lines. And unfortunately, we make decisions around that. And you may feel powerless at times to redirect those decisions. And that's often something just to, you can advocate as a practitioner, or you can, ensure that decisions that are made are evidence-based in one direction. And because the other thing that happens is often that resource allocation can be unethically distributed due to interference from stakeholders, and also stakeholders that financially contribute in some way or another. So, like I said, these are just things that you may come up against, and it's something for you to keep a critical thought of when you're working in the field. And like I said, negotiating political influence in public health practice, this is one that you will probably come up against. I mean, even if you're working not in the political sector and in the NGO sector, policy surrounding public health practice really does infiltrate in politics right through from that higher level government, national sector, right through down to community participation and community health and funding flow. And you know, if your minister is directing health expenditure in a certain way or not, then unfortunately that is what the outcome is, and you know, we are a little bit powerless to change that. Another ethical challenge is ensuring standards of care, and again, this is tied a bit to the above two points there, in terms of the fact that as public health practitioners, and we think about back to those values that I started to talk about earlier, that health is a human right, and it should be equitable across all areas, globally and nationally. But we know that doesn't happen, and we know that doesn't happen for, you know, resource reasons, political reasons, and ensure it is in our, you know, role as a public health practitioner to ensure that standard of care across populations does exist. However, at times that can be compromised due to all sorts of elements. And like I said, you can only do as much as you can in some of these roles, but bearing in mind that, you know, your role as a public health practitioner is to ensure equality, and critically checking in with what you're doing and how things are going at times definitely can help you challenge or come when you come up against these issues. And often at times, you know, you need to question the role of public health in that sphere. You know, is mandating a certain policy the best option, public health option, or not? Okay. You know, at the moment, I really question the role of public health in terms of behaviour intervention. Is it the most effective role? And that's a very simple, you know, just me questioning the practice as a whole. But, you know, at times you can also come up, if you're doing emergency response, or, you know, if you're prioritising water sanitation in one area and not another area, or, you know, looking at how to ensure that contraception is used in, you know, third world countries, in terms of looking at birth control and bettering the health outcomes for women and children in third world countries, and you know, looking at them critically in terms of the populations that these interventions are going into, the role that we have, and do we have, again, that authority to determine, or is this a need that's been determined by the population or the community that's seeking for that health intervention? So looking and thinking about these things critically, and the ethics behind them, is something that I think is important going forward. How do we do that? So, you know, I think there's a few ethical principles that sort of underpin a lot of public health practice, and we know that health is a human right, and unquestionably that each individual should have autonomy over their health. I mean, these two really are the gold standard, the pillar that we're really striving to achieve for everyone globally. And as we know that there's so many obstacles for so many marginalised populations to achieve these. And as public health practitioners, what is the small steps that we can be doing to enable these two important principles? And I think part of that is, you know, bridging those sort of sectors or communities across professions, not working just in our public health sphere, not in our silo here, but really reaching out across professions, be it medical, be it, you know, engineering or construction, be it political, be it financial, in looking at health economics in the best way, and working with the World Bank in terms of looking at the best way to drive health outcomes from a financial perspective in communities. So, you know, I think that we need to enable those two first 2 points to happen. We really need to, we can't do it on our own. And underpinning those ethical values, we really need to ensure we work across professions. And we need to build that trust. And I think that, like I said before, you know, who has the right to go in and choose what community want for their health? The evidence might say that they need to have X, Y, or Z. They need to be attending school more. They need to be washing their hands more to prevent the spread of conjunctivitis or basic hygiene illnesses, hygiene-related spread of disease. But is that their first priority? What is their first priority? Their first priority might be something to do with, training unemployed people in the community to then generate more economic input. So, building those trusts, and that is something that as a public health practitioner, we have to bear in mind as a hat we need to wear as well. So we're a communicator across professions, and we need to work with and in communities to build that trust. And we also need to really ensure that we are providing an opportunity for, or we're not just providing an intervention for one section of a marginalised population. What if that marginalised population has other members that can't access that intervention but would benefit from it as well? So being mindful of how we can facilitate that and how we're not closing off opportunity is often something we need to think of from an ethical standpoint as well. And we also know, or we need to have knowledge derived from systematic investigation, and we know that needs to come from evidence-based, but not only. Okay, so we need to have that community voice. We need to have that community participation as well, and we need to know our idea of what that health issue might be is, and how it is best handled, and what the evidence is saying is maybe not what is best for that community. So it needs to come from solid systematic investigation before you can then really ensure that you're adhering to all those ethical values. And finally, as public health practitioners, we really need to think about the fact that our action is to protect health, but also dignity within populations. And is the intervention that we're thinking about, or the policy, does that have those two principles at its forefront, in what it will be doing, or is it causing harm rather than protection? And we'll be looking a little bit more about unintentional harm later on. So how does it look in action, or how can we start to think about this in relation to programs and programs that we're building? And you're going to be working within public health programs over forthcoming sessions. So something to think about. You're not building the program, so you're not involved in that aspect, but it's something for you just to critically think about. And you can see here that the proposed this is a 6-step framework for ethical practice within public health programs that's been outlined. And I'll put the full reading up on Views for you this week as well. But the first one being, and this is the forefront when you're developing it, is that you need to know what the goals are of the program. What are the proposed public health goals? What are you actually wanting to have as outcomes for this program? And that's where you need to go back to that systematic investigation. Are the proposed goals what the community wants or not? Are the proposed goals, is there a hidden agenda within those proposed goals? Is it funded by a certain body? Are they wanting certain buy-in? So being really critical and really looking from an independent view in terms of, are those health goals best for that program? Then, you're all going to be working in the space of number 2 in terms of how effective the program is, and that again comes back to ethical practice and looking at what were the effective outcomes? Were they ethical or not? If the intervention did not show effectiveness in addressing those goals of the program, why or why not? And ethically looking at what may have been done differently or better. So that's really, number 2. And then we come back to a little bit about unintended harm or burdens of the program. And when we're assessing a program, it's important to look at this as well, because often participant burden is high, okay? And we're often, from an academic or, an evidence-based standpoint, we know that they need to complete this highly intensive program to have, better mental health outcome, cognitive therapy outcomes, or, whatnot. But what is that burden on that individual? Are they able to fulfill that commitment? Did we ask you know, financially, are they able to participate or not? So, you know, critically looking at the ethics behind the delivery of a lot of these in terms of participant burden, burdens on community as well. And then that also plays into the sustainability of the program. So ethically looking at those elements is important. And then suggesting or looking at how they could be minimised. Okay, so, you know, was the intervention too intense? Was it asking for too much time? Was it too costly? Did it take too many members out of a community at a certain point of time? You know, we need to be realistic about how we can maintain a sustainable ethical program, often in populations. And then was it implemented fairly? Did you just, you know, how were the participants chosen? Or, you know, was it not distributed fairly across all Indigenous communities across Northern Australia? Or was there more resources put into this community, and how was that justified to not implement it in another community? And critically looking at these elements and the outcomes in terms of how well a program did in one area and not another area, and sort of nutting down behind it. Well, was it ethically correct that there was more resources placed there and not elsewhere? And then how can the benefits and burdens be fairly distributed in the future? So looking at fair funding models, or looking at, you know, and it's not necessarily funding, but it could be just general resourcing, or, you know, access to, could be geography. So assessing all these is very important in terms of ensuring that the ethical practice of public health standards are upheld within programs as well. All right, so does anyone have any questions before I sort of break us into our first activity today? No? All right, so what we're going to do is that sort of an example, or, you know, a way, the future in terms of public health is personalised medicine, or a feature of general practice and care is going to be personalised medicine, particularly looking at genomics and really nutting down, you know, what can be altered into, and all sorts of different interplay. And it's that interplay between science, technology, genomes, and then, you know, public health use of that and implications. So our first workshop activity today is going to be, you know, what role does public health have with the future use of these technologies, particularly around ethical use of genomics and personalised medicine? Is it fair? You know, it's not going to be equitable and accessible by all. It's extremely expensive at the moment. What are other ethical fallouts of this? And, you know, and you can also have a little bit of chat around, you know, other medical technologies that are changing things. There's a whole lot of interplay within fertility and you know, all sorts of gene deletion and whatnot early on in utero, in the IVF process, to ensure that certain diseases are not genetic diseases are not passed on. You know, what's the ethics around all these elements? So what I'm going to do is I'll just break us out of here. So I'll stop this here.